Brnc Bbs Hr Hr by F. Scott Fitzgerald. After dark on Saturday night, one could stand on the first tee of the golf course and see the country club windows as a yellow expanse over a very black and wavy ocean. The waves of this ocean, so to speak, were the heads of many curious caddies. A few of the more ingenious chauffeurs, the golfer's professional deaf sister, and there were usually several stray, diffident waves who might have rolled inside had they so desired. This was the gallery. The balcony was inside. It consisted of a circle of wicker chairs that lined the wall of the combination club and ballroom. At these Saturday night dances, it was largely feminine. A great babble of middle-aged ladies with sharp eyes and icy hearts belonged longuerettes and large bosoms. The main function of the balcony was critical. It occasionally showed grudging admiration, but never approval, for it is well known among ladies over 35 that when the younger set dance in the summertime, it is with the very worst intentions in the world, and if they are not bombarded with stony-eyed eyes, stray couples will dance weird barbaric interludes in the corners, and the more popular, more dangerous girls will sometimes be kissed in the parked limousines of unsuspecting dowagers. But, after all, this critical circle is not close enough to the stage to see the actors' faces and catch the subtler byplay. It can only frown and lean, ask questions and make satisfactory deductions from its set of postulates, such as the one which states that every young man with a large income leads the life of a hunted partridge. It never appreciates the drama of the shifting, semi-cruel world of adolescence. No, boxes, orchestra circle, principals, and chorus be represented by the medley of faces and voices that sway to the plaintive African rhythm of Dyer's dance orchestra. From 16-year-old Otis Ormond, who has 2 more years at Hill School, to G. Reese Stoddard, over whose bureau at home hangs a Harvard Law diploma, from little Madeline Hogue, whose hair still feels strange and uncomfortable on top of her head, to Bessie McRae, who had been the life of the party for a little too long, more than 10 years, the medley is not only the center of the stage, but contains the only people capable of getting an unobstructed view of it. With a flourish and a bang, the music stops. The couples exchange artificial, effortless smiles, fatuously repeating la-dee-da-dee-da-da-dum. Then the clatter of young feminine voices soar over the burst of clapping. A few disappointed stags caught mid-floor as they had been about to cut in subsided listlessly back to the walls, because this was not like the riotous Christmas dances. These summer hops were considered just pleasantly warm and exciting, where even the younger marrieds rose and performed ancient waltzes and terrifying foxtrots to the tolerant amusement of their younger brothers and sisters. Warren McIntyre, who casually attended Yale, being one of the unfortunate stags, felt in his dinner coat pocket for a cigarette and strolled out into the wide semi-dark veranda, where couples were scattered at tables, filling the lantern-hung night with vague words and hazy laughter. He nodded here and there at the less absorbed as he passed each couple. Some half-forgotten fragment of a story played in his mind, for it was not a large city, and everyone who was who's who to everyone else's past. There, for example, were Jim Strain and Ethel Demarest, who had been privately engaged for 3 years. Everyone knew that soon as Jim managed to hold a job for more than 2 months, she would marry him. Yet how bored they both looked, and how wearily Ethel regarded Jim sometimes, as if she wondered why she had trained the vines of her affection on such a wind-shaken popular. Warren was 19 and rather pitying with those of his friends who hadn't gone east to college. But, like most boys, he bragged tremendously about the girls of the city when he was away from it. There was Genevieve Ormond, who regularly made the rounds of dances, house parties, and football games at Princeton, Yale, Williams, and Cornell. There was black-eyed Roberta Dillon, who was quite as famous to her own generation as Hiram Johnson or Ty Cobb. And, of course, there was Marjorie Harvey, who, besides having a fairy-like fairy-like face and a dazzling, bewildering tongue, was already justly celebrated for having turned 5 cartwheels in succession during the last pump and slipper dance at New Haven. Warren, who had grown up across the street from Marjorie, had long been crazy about her. Sometimes she seemed to reciprocate his feelings with a faint gratitude, but she had tried him by her infallible test, and informed him gravely that she did not love him. Her test was that when she was away from him, she forgot him and had affairs with other boys. Warren found this discouraging, especially as Marjorie had been making little trips all summer, and for the first 2 or 3 days after each arrival home he saw great heaps of mail on the Harvey's hall table addressed to her in various masculine handwritings. To make matters worse, all during the month of August she had been visited by her cousin Bernice from Eau Claire, and it seemed impossible to see her alone. It was always necessary to hunt round and find someone to take care of Bernice. As August waned, this was becoming more and more difficult. Much as Warren worshipped Marjorie, he had to admit that Cousin Bernice was sort of dopeless. She was pretty, with dark hair and high color, but she was no fun on a party. Every Saturday night he danced a long, arduous duty dance with her to please Marjorie, but he had never been anything but bored in her company. Warren, a soft voice at her elbow broke in upon his thoughts, and he turned to see Marjorie, flushed and radiant as usual. She laid a hand on his shoulder, and a glow settled almost imperceptibly over him. "Warren," she whispered, "do something for me. Dance with Bernice. She's been stuck with little Otis Ormond for almost an hour." Warren's glow faded. "Why, sure," he answered half-heartedly. You don't mind, do you? I'll see that you don't get stuck." "It's all right." Marjorie smiled, that smile that was thanks enough. "You're an angel, and I'm obliged loads." With a sigh, the angel glanced around the veranda, but Bernice and Otis were not in sight. He wandered back inside, and there in front of the women's dressing room he found Otis in the center of a group of young men who were convulsed with laughter. Otis was brandishing a piece of timber he had picked up and discoursing volubly. "She's gone in to fix her hair," he announced wildly. "I'm waiting to dance with another hour with her." Their laughter was renewed. "Why don't some of you cut in?" cried Otis resentfully. "She likes more variety." "Why, Otis," suggested a friend, "you've just barely got used to her." "Why the 2x4, Otis?" inquired Warren, smiling. "The 2x4? Oh, this? This is a club. When she comes out, I'll hit her on the head and knock her in again." Warren collapsed on the settee and howled with glee. "Never mind, Otis," he articulated finally. "I'm relieving you this time." Otis simulated a sudden fainting attack and handed the stick to Warren. "If you need it, old man," he said hoarsely. No matter how beautiful or brilliant a girl may be, the reputation of not being frequently cut in on makes her position at a dance unfortunate. Perhaps boys prefer her company to that of the butterflies with whom they dance a dozen times, but youth in this jazz-nourished generation is temperamentally restless, and the idea of foxtrotting with more than one full foxtrot with the same girl is distasteful, not to say odious. When it comes to several dances, and the intermissions between, she can be quite sure that a young man, once relieved, will never tread on her wayward toes again. Warren danced the next full dance with Bernice, and finally, thankful for the intermission, he led her to a table on the veranda. There was a moment of silence while she did unimpressive things with her fan. "It's hotter here than in Eau Claire," she said. Warren stifled a sigh and nodded. It might be for all he knew or cared. He wondered idly whether she was a poor conversationalist because she got no attention, or got no attention because she was a poor conversationalist. "You're going to be here much longer?" he asked, then turned rather red. She might suspect his reason for asking. "Another week," she answered, and stared at him as if to lunge at his next remark when it left his lips. Warren fidgeted. Then, with a sudden charitable impulse, he decided to try part of his line on her. He turned and looked at her eyes. "You've got an awfully kissable mouth," he began quietly. This was a remark that he sometimes made to girls at college proms when they were talking in just such half dark as this. Bernice distinctly jumped. She turned an ungraceful red and became clumsy with her fan. No one had ever made such a remark to her before. Fresh! The word had slipped out before she realized it, and she bit her lips. Too late she decided to be amused and offered him a flustered smile. Warren was annoyed. Though not accustomed to have that remark taken seriously, still it usually provoked a laugh or a paragraph of sentimental banter, and he hated to be called fresh, except in a joking way. His charitable impulse died, and he switched the topic. Jim Strain and Ethel Demarest sitting out as usual, he commented. This was more in Bernice's line, but a faint regret mingled with her relief as the subject changed. Men did not talk to her about kissable mouths, but she knew that they talked in some such way to other girls. Oh, yes, she said, and laughed. I hear they've been mooning around for years without a red penny. Isn't it silly? Warren's disgust increased. Jim Strain was a close friend of his brother's, and anyway, he considered it bad form to sneer at people for not having money. But Bernice had no intention of sneering. She was merely nervous.